HMIC advises the police governance steering group that elected politicians should have a say in policy. The first person to fail immigration checks at the airport since treaty implementation is returned to the UK. The Spanish Foreign Minister says the treaty is a historic opportunity to deepen UK-Spain relations. The first consignment of UK mail since the new treaty arrangements clears Spanish customs. And full planning permission granted for a new public service hub at Sir Joshua Hassan House. Good evening. An inspector from His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary, Lee Freeman, has strongly advised the police governance steering group that elected politicians should have a say in police policy. This has been confirmed by Governor Sir Ben Bathurst, who says the steering group will be factoring in that view. Sir Ben says it's too early in the term of Commissioner Owain Richards to carry out an inspection, but confirmed that he asked Inspector Freeman to pay the Royal Gibraltar Police a visit and to advise the steering group. In the second part of a GBC interview recorded this week, Jonathan Sacramento asked the Governor about police independence.
One of the areas in Gibraltar that you're responsible for is the police.
Yeah.
And the police is currently engaged in a reform process. So there's governance reform of which you are a part. In your view, should an elected government have a stronger role in police governance, or would that be contrary to operational independence?
Yeah, I mean, I think just to clarify, there is operational reform of the RGP going on. That would sort of happen anyway with a new commissioner. They're always going to take a sort of fresh look at how things are going, and of course we have got a good number of the McGrail inquiry recommendations that apply to the operational aspects of the police. And so the Commissioner has got that bit firmly in his portfolio. I'm not getting involved in that. That's his business. He's the professional lead of the Royal Gibraltar Police, and he's got all the expertise he needs there. So there's operational reform. Then there is reform of the governance of the police, and that is the business of holding the Commissioner to account. And that's where I would say that we've got a bit of streamlining to be done. I mean, what one's got to work out is where is the right place that policy is formulated. Secondly, where are the resources coming from and who's responsible for the resources. And thirdly, is this sort of holding to account mechanism, and a number of individuals can play a part, but that's really the independent advice and sort of scrutiny of the police. UK, as you're probably aware, is changing its system. Used to have a model like Gibraltar based on the police authority, then moved to police and crime commissioners. Now has got a white paper that abolishes the police and crime commissioners and moves to an elected mayoral system overseeing policy for the police and holding to account, and actually resources as well. UK governance is actually quite complicated. By the time you look at England, Wales, Northern Ireland, Scotland, all slightly different systems, and then different systems in metropolitan area. What we've got to do in Gibraltar is make sure we've got a really very straightforward system. It's a small police force, albeit one that's been expanded quite significantly by an extra 34 police officers on top of the 250. But we've got to get this, the streamlining of policy, resources, holding to account, and then clearly operations are completely separate, and that won't change.
Are we expecting another HMAC report or investigation soon?
No, because I haven't asked the His Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary to do another inspection yet. It just seems where you've got a new commissioner, well, I say new, he's been in position about a year now, he's got plenty of work to be done. He needs to be allowed to have a chance to model the changes in the way he sees fit. Once he's got a little bit further underway, I think that's the moment to bring in the inspector. What we did have is a visit. I asked His Majesty's Inspector of Constabulary, an inspector called Lee Freeman. He was the Chief Constable in Humberside. I mean, a really superb Chief Constable. He came in just for a discussion with the RGP, discussion with me, and I also asked him to brief our steering group for the reform of the governance of the police. So that's what he was doing. It wasn't an inspection. And what was interesting with him, he was telling us about the reform in the UK, and he very strongly made the point that the governance is best done when the democratically elected politicians or mayors or what have you have a say in the policy for the police, and that was his view. So we're factoring in his views.
Finally, I wanted to ask you on a personal note. You've been in Gibraltar for a while now. Has your living here influenced your understanding of Gibraltar's relationship with the UK at all?
Absolutely. I think I had a sort of honeymoon in the first year, and by the end of the first year I thought I understood it. I think now I've come to the end of my second year, I realise how little I understood in my first year. So, my knowledge sort of builds and builds. What's been really useful, actually, we managed through a number of ways to increase our staff here at the convent. So we've recruited 3 very high caliber young Gibraltarians, all under the age of 25, who help us in our work, and their perspective has been really, really useful compared with the way that I from UK come at things. They're a very helpful counterbalance, and they educate us a great deal in the ways of Gibraltar.
The British Foreign Secretary Ed Miliband and Spanish Foreign Minister José Manuel Álvarez have reaffirmed the commitment to what they describe as the new chapter in the relations opened by the Gibraltar Treaty. Their meeting in Madrid was the first since Mr. Miliband became Foreign Secretary. José Manuel Álvarez said the signing of the treaty was a historic opportunity to further deepen UK-Spain bilateral relations. Meanwhile, Ed Miliband emphasised what he called the partnership between the two countries and the two progressive governments.
I want José Manuel to particularly welcome your personal leadership on the UK-EU Gibraltar Treaty. Thank you for your leadership that you have shown. And I'm determined, I think, as you said in your remarks, to build on our cooperation, including on defence and security, gender equality, and the rights and empowerment of women and girls, as well, as I say, as the climate crisis. So I very much look forward to our discussions today. I see us together as the custodians of the great partnership between our two countries, and I look forward to strengthening and deepening that partnership in the months and years ahead.
Nuestra relación bilateral se encuentra en un momento absolutamente extraordinario. Tenemos desde el año pasado un mecanismo estratégico bilateral que nos permite avanzar en nuestra relación bilateral. El día 14 de julio se firmó ese histórico acuerdo en relación a Gibraltar, que también abre una nueva etapa de futuro compartido, y de hecho hoy vamos a seguir avanzando.
The ministers discussed international issues, including Ukraine and the Middle East, before signing a joint declaration on climate and energy cooperation. A passenger on an inbound flight this morning became the first person since treaty implementation to be refused entry to Gibraltar after failing immigration checks at the airport. This was confirmed by the government and the Borders and Coast Guard Agency in response to GBC questions. GBC understands the passenger had a UK e-visa, which would have seen them sent back even before the treaty arrangements were implemented. The passenger was required to leave on the next plane back to the UK, with the EasyJet flight to Manchester delayed by almost 2 hours as a result. Another passenger told GBC the Manchester-bound plane was already pushing back from the gate when it stopped and returned to allow the new passenger to board. For its part, EasyJet says the flight was delayed on departure at the request of the authorities at Gibraltar Airport. In other news, the government says the first consignment of mail from the United Kingdom under the new treaty arrangements has cleared Spanish customs and is now on its way to Gibraltar. A separate consignment from Gibraltar to the UK has also cleared customs as the new system for moving mail begins to operate.
The way mail travels between Gibraltar and the UK has changed. Instead of going through the airport, post now travels by road through France and Spain before crossing the land border. Today's UK consignment was the first to travel under the new arrangements. It was dispatched by road from the UK, with wildfires affecting parts of France and Spain causing some disruption to road transport. Mail from other parts of the world has continued to arrive, while post between Gibraltar and Spain has also continued to move, and local deliveries are operating normally. The change has required new customs procedures and changes to the way mail is transported. The government says it's been working with the Gibraltar Post Office, postal operators and others involved to deal with practical issues as they arise. It says it's too early to give a clear estimate of delivery times between Gibraltar and the UK under the new route.
You're watching GBC News. Still to come, more on customs treaty arrangements. The Chamber of Commerce says it's met with the government, while the GSC says urgent measures are needed. And full planning permission for a shared public service hub at Sir Joshua Hassan House. We'll be back in a few minutes. Stay with us. Welcome back. Thousands of migrants have crossed from Morocco into Ceuta today, prompting what the enclave leaders called a humanitarian and security emergency. President of the regional government, Juan Jesus Vivas, is quoted in the Spanish press describing the situation as a national emergency and calling for action from the central government. This evening, the Spanish press reports that the country's armed forces will be deployed to support the Guardia Civil there. The Ministry of the Interior has also said Spain and Morocco have agreed to strengthen efforts to stop the influx and to review and implement measures to deport all those who've entered Ceuta illegally. Minister for the Interior, Fernando Grande Marlaska, is set to visit Ceuta tomorrow. The Chamber of Commerce says it has raised businesses' concerns about the new treaty arrangements with government after members reported delays getting goods into Gibraltar. The Chamber met government officials this week to discuss the problems and put forward suggestions to improve the flow of goods across the frontier. Chamber President John Isla says that while there have been signs of progress since last week, businesses are still dealing with backlogs caused by new customs procedures, IT problems and delays on the Spanish side of the border. He told our reporter Kevin Ruiz that if those problems continue into next week, businesses will expect contingency measures to be considered.
I know that the customs and other government departments have been working their socks off till very late hours to try and solve some of the issues. But clearly, we needed to put across the concerns that our members had, so that to ensure that the government is aware of them, and also to try and make suggestions to speed things up.
Now, we've seen those tailbacks over the last couple of weeks. We've heard the numerous reports from businesses, from individuals, from drivers themselves as well. Tell us about some of those concerns, tell us about some of those issues, tell us about some of those suggestions that were discussed at that meeting.
I think I have to say that things have improved somewhat from last week, but there is still a backlog. It hasn't helped, obviously, that the La Línea fair has been on, and that also that there have been two public holidays when the Spanish side of the border has not been operating. So that in itself always creates a problem, even in previous years. Yeah, but one has to understand that there has been a big change in terms of how goods flow from Spain and the wider EU into Gibraltar. The customs systems have changed both on the Spanish side and on the Gibraltar side. That has created much more work for those that are operating those systems on both sides.
And on the ground, what are your members telling you? How are your members suffering?
I can't be specific. I know, for example, in our case, in my business, we import beer, and we also have to import gas to serve that beer in draft in the pubs. And this morning I had to speak to one of the customs agents on the Spanish side to ask them, to plead with them to please bring in my gas cylinders. Otherwise, they wouldn't have gas for the weekend to be able to dispense beer. So that's an example, yeah. But I think, you know, have to understand that how goods arrive in Gibraltar. You have trucks that come in directly with full loads. You have trucks that come in as groupage, so that's multiple consignments on one truck from the UK that would also come in. But then there's a lot of freight and consignments that get dropped off in stores in La Linea to be then grouped onto a truck to bring them into Gib. As I understand it, that backlog still exists, and customs agents on the Spanish side and transport companies on the Spanish side are still trying to grapple with that backlog. So I think it's going to take some time before, you know, the backlog is cleared, and hopefully over time the IT systems can be improved because they are quite cumbersome to use. And that's one of the representations that we've made here. And I know that, having spoken to a Spanish customs agent in Spain, they are also making representations to their representative bodies.
Now, do your members consider these issues still reasonable 2 weeks on, or is there growing concern amongst them?
I think there is concern, but I think they also need to understand that all of this has been delivered in a very short period of time, and it's only normal that systems do have issues. But in a way, one of the reasons why we reached out to government was to express the concerns, and I think the government understands that members are watching, and if within a reasonable period of time, say by this time next week, the issues have not resolved, then I think that our members would rightly be expressing concern and asking for contingency measures to be put in place as necessary.
And has the government committed to any timeline with you?
No, they haven't, and I wouldn't expect them to either. You know, they need to work through the issues, and you know, one of the things that we've said to them is that, you know, perhaps the customs are being bombarded with queries from different traders, and many of those queries could be very similar in nature. And I think that one of the things that they need to do, and it's one of the things that we suggested, is that they improve the communication flows in terms of when solutions are found to issues, and communicate those to traders and to businesses. And we've offered ourselves to be part of that communication process.
Meanwhile, the GST says urgent practical measures need to be taken to reduce costs and delays affecting goods entering via the land frontier. It says the government repeatedly said it was ready for implementation and that it's now insufficient to wave off disruption as teething problems. However, the Chief Minister says while there is work still to be done, things are getting much better each day and are returning to normal less than a week and a half after a transformational change.
The GST says some of the problems businesses have faced over the first 2 weeks of treaty implementation were foreseeable or could have been identified if processes had been properly tested. It claims the new arrangements have effectively created a harder border for many goods arriving from the United Kingdom. Among the measures it calls for are immediate specialist training for customs personnel and enlarging Gibraltar's commercial vehicle holding area. The GST also says the government should work with Spain to improve the management of commercial traffic in La Linea and calls for a fully integrated pre-arrival system so freight forwarders can submit documentation before goods leave the UK. Shadow Minister for Business Craig Saccarello says it's important to fully digitise the border and make the new arrangements work for everyone. In response, the Chief Minister says Mr Saccarello is not acknowledging that there will always be issues on adoption of a new system. Fabian Picardo also says while many traders have worked hard to get things right, others have ignored new guidance, not attended training, and in some cases are just refusing to change to new systems. He says the government and public servants will keep working, adding all Mr Saccarello is contributing is criticism of their efforts.
The Development and Planning Commission has unanimously approved plans to refurbish and repurpose Sir Joshua Hassan House or Secretary's Lane. The building will be converted into a shared public service hub for the community mental health team, the Ombudsman and the Citizens Advice Bureau.
The project aims to modernise the property while preserving its historic character and civic importance. Most of the work will take place internally, with the existing layout reorganised to provide offices, consultation and clinic rooms. There will also be treatment areas, a reception and waiting spaces, staff facilities, activity areas and access to the garden. 3 separate entrances are planned, one for each service with accessible ramps or level thresholds. Secretary's Lane will also be reopened to controlled vehicle access for authorised drop-offs and collections, managed through a security-operated barrier. External works will include repairs, re-rendering and a new colour scheme using a muted yellow ochre finish, blue shutters and white detailing. The project also includes the upgrading of insulation, modern energy-efficient services and new plants in the garden. The application received unanimous support from all members of the Commission. On to another project, a request to extend working hours for the demolition of the extension jetty number 3 at the North Mole was considered. The contractor said longer hours would help complete the works between August and November and avoid an anticipated 3-month delay. But concerns were raised about nearby residential areas and gaps in the noise information provided. Town planning recommended restricting louder demolition works to daytime and evening hours, with no such activity on Sundays or public holidays, and lower noise marine operations to be permitted later, subject to real-time noise monitoring, weekly reporting, and restrictions on lighting and lifting operations. The Commission accepted these recommendations with the proviso that permission be revoked if serious breaches take place.
And the Minister for Health has welcomed the DPC's approval of the project. Gemma Arias-Vasquez said a dedicated, purpose-designed home for the community mental health team will give people better and more dignified access to the care they rely on. And a government application to temporarily remove parking outside St. Joseph's School has been passed by a majority, with Housing Minister Pat Olfila abstaining. The minister said she was deeply concerned at the loss of paid parking under the zone scheme without providing alternative facilities. The loss of parking has been planned so that temporary porta-cabin classrooms can be set up in the area while works to St. Joseph's School continue. The application has been approved by a slim majority, but the DPC will write to the relevant government departments and convey the concerns that have been expressed. The fire and rescue service was called out to tackle a fire at the Rock Hotel early this morning. 2 fire appliances attended the scene and the fire was under control within 20 minutes. The GFRS told GBC the fire started in a kitchen area and not much damage was sustained. It says no one was in danger, with staff and guests self-evacuating once the fire alarm went off. Well, that's all from the GBC News team for now. Just before we leave you tonight, visiting indie band Nothing Rhymes with Orange were on Gibraltar today this afternoon. They'll be playing at the Weekender tomorrow evening, a free festival at the Arena, which kicks off at 6 p.m. They gave us a sneak preview of the performance with a stripped-down rendition of their song The Great Escape. Enjoy the music and enjoy your evening. From the newsroom and myself, good night.
As I waste away, just in time for I feel fine as I waste away, just in time for the great escape.
Oh my goodness.